Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to unpack those complex stories, peel back the layers and see what's really underneath. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating intersection of legal facts, public image, and these powerful cultural codes. We're looking at the federal firearm case involving Clifford T.I. Harris, you probably know him as the king of the South, and all the intense noise around it. So our mission today is pretty straightforward. First, we'll lay out the verified facts of that 2007-2008 gun case, just what the record shows. Then we're going to really dig into those persistent snitch allegations that came out of it, where they come from. And finally, explore this clash, this real dissonance between the formal legal stuff and the informal kind of street codes that still shape how people see them. It's amazing how the same facts get read so differently. Okay, so let's get into the specifics, what actually went down.
Right. To really get it, you got to go back to October 2007. That's when the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, they set up this pretty sophisticated sting operation, and T.I. was the target. The key moment was when his bodyguard, a guy named Corey Williams, tried to buy guns for him. And not just any guns, 3 unregistered machine guns and 2 silencers. Serious stuff. Illicit. And the attempt was explicitly on T.I.'s behalf.
Wow. Okay.
So Williams gets caught in the act, basically, apprehended right there. And here's the crucial part. He immediately agreed to cooperate with the investigators.
Immediately.
Yeah. And it wasn't just talking. He actively recorded conversations. Those recordings led the feds straight towards. T.I. Williams became essentially their key informant.
And that leads to T.I.'s own arrest, which was... well, it was incredibly public, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Taken into custody in a parking lot in downtown Atlanta right before the BD Hip Hop Awards. Talk about timing.
Yeah, you couldn't script it better for maximum drama. It instantly blew up, headlines everywhere, speculation running wild from minute one.
Right.
And it didn't stop there. After the bodyguard's cooperation, they got warrants. Searched T.I.'s car, searched his house.
And they found more.
They did. 6 more firearms. Hidden away in a closet compartment. Now, here's the legal hammer. T.I. already had a felony conviction.
Ah, so he couldn't legally own any guns.
Exactly. 0. So finding multiple guns, especially after his guy tried to buy machine guns, that made it a very serious federal case. Potentially huge prison time.
So let's talk about the legal outcome then. Because like you said, this is where things get fuzzy.
Yeah.
Where the public story and the court story seem to diverge.
That's it, exactly. Fast forward to March 2008, T.I. takes a plea deal. He pleads guilty to multiple federal firearms charges.
Okay, admits guilt.
Yes. Then sentencing comes about a year later, March 2009. And the sentence was, well, it was 1 year and 1 day in federal prison.
1 year and a day.
Yeah.
For those charges.
Mm-hmm. But that wasn't all. The deal also included a massive amount of community service, 1,500 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, and it wasn't just picking up trash. It involved public speaking, trying to deter kids from crime, and even that MTV reality show, Road to Redemption.
I remember that show.
Right. Plus 3 years supervised release, 1 year of that under home detention, and a $100,000 fine. So it was complex. And, compared to what could have happened, pretty unique.
And it's really interesting, that bodyguard, Corey Williams, the guy who actually tried to buy the machine guns,
Yeah.
he got basically the same prison sentence, didn't he? 1 year and 1 day.
Almost identical prison time, yeah. Which, on the surface, seems odd given their different roles, right? The buyer and the alleged mastermind getting the same sentence.
Exactly.
And that similarity, that perceived lack of distinction in punishment, despite the bodyguard clearly cooperating, that definitely added fuel to the snitch fire later on.
So what did Williams actually say in court about cooperating?
Well, he fully admitted his role, confirmed he wore the wire, recorded T.I., but later he sort of implied, or was interpreted, that his cooperation was more about helping the feds build their case against T.I.
Okay.
Rather than him explicitly testifying against T.I. to, say, get T.I. a longer sentence or dramatically reduce his own. It's a subtle difference, maybe.
A nuance.
A key nuance, yeah. It was more about facilitating the investigation, providing the evidence they needed because he was caught, not necessarily like a classic, I'll tell you everything if you go easy on him kind of deal for T.I.'s sentence itself. It clarifies the nature of the cooperation.
Okay, but even with those details who corroborated, the specific sentences, the nature of the cooperation, why did the snitch label stick so hard? What drove that narrative so powerfully?
I think it really comes down to expectations versus reality, especially within hip-hop culture and, street perspectives.
Also,
well, look, the charges. Multiple machine guns, silencers, felon in possession. People hear that and they think, okay, that's decades, maybe life. federal time.
Right. The standard perception is that those are extremely serious charges.
Extremely. So when T.I. gets 1 year and a day, plus this very public community service, the TV show, it just looked off. Suspiciously light to many observers.
Like he must have done something to get that deal.
Exactly. In certain circles, the immediate assumption is, okay, what did he give them? There had to be some kind of trade, some cooperation, some information exchanged. That's the logic rooted in that street code.
And then there was that Crime Stoppers commercial, that visual that really seemed to solidify things for a lot of people.
Oh, massively. Pouring gasoline on the fire is a good way to put it. Appearing in a PSA, telling people to call the authorities with tips.
Even though it was part of the plea deal.
Right. It was court mandated, a condition of the sentence. But optics matter, you know. Seeing him do that, combined with his nickname TIP, which people started twisting into TI police.
Yeah, I remember hearing that.
It created this really potent visual shorthand for snitching, regardless of the legal technicalities. The backlash was immediate and harsh.
So the image trumped the facts for many.
It often does. And then you add the internet, online forums, social media. These places just amplified everything. Speculation turned into, like, accepted wisdom almost overnight.
You mentioned a Reddit comment.
Yeah, there was one that kind of summed up the sentiment. I think it was something like, T.I. told on the guys who tried to kill him. After feds built a case and arrested him, he told the reasons he bought the guns.
Wow.
Now, that's just some random person online, right? Not based on any verified legal fact we know of. But it shows how that narrative took hold. People fill in the gaps based on their assumptions.
The T.I. himself has fought back against this narrative constantly.
Oh, vehemently.
He's addressed it many times, right?
Yeah.
Like on his podcast,
Yeah.
Expeditiously. There was that clip where he told a story about his cousin taking a gun charge for him.
Using it as an example of loyalty, of the code he does follow.
And he said pretty directly something like, how much information has Tip ever given anyone to get anybody locked up? 0. He draws a very clear line.
Absolutely. He flat out denies ever giving up info that led to someone else's arrest or conviction. He's trying to reclaim that narrative, align his actions with the very code people accuse him of breaking.
It's just, it's really striking how optics, perception, these cultural codes, how they could just steamroll the actual legal facts of a situation.
It really is. This case is such a stark example of how these informal justice systems like street codes operate alongside and sometimes completely override the formal legal system in the court of public opinion.
It makes you wonder about the trust gap, right, between communities and official systems.
Totally. That street code often develops precisely because there's a lack of trust or a history of perceived injustice. So loyalty, non-cooperation, that becomes paramount, sometimes even more than avoiding prison time.
So let's try to pull this together for you, the listener. You've got these two distinct viewpoints. On one hand, the legal standpoint, T.I. navigated a plea deal, a smart one, arguably. It dramatically reduced his potential sentence, could have been way worse.
Decades worse, potentially.
It involved public works, kept him out of long-term prison. And crucially, the record shows his bodyguard was the cooperating witness, the one whose actions kicked off the investigation and who wore the wire, not T.I.
Correct. Legally, that's the picture. But then you have the cultural standpoint. Especially within hip-hop, street culture, appearances matter a lot.
Yeah.
Seeing him in that Crime Stoppers video, even if forced, getting what looks like a lenient sentence, in that world, that can be seen as betrayal. It doesn't matter if it was court-ordered or a good legal strategy.
The perception of cooperation is enough.
For some, yes. It's seen as violating that unwritten rulebook. Effectively navigating the system looks like compromising with it, which breaks the code, even if the alternative was much more severe punishment.
Yet, despite all this noise, T.I.'s career hasn't exactly stalled. He's remained incredibly visible.
Remarkably resilient, yeah. Still active in music, TV, business. The King of the South title still holds weight for many.
Which says something about his ability to manage this complex situation.
Right.
To keep working despite the cloud in some communities.
Definitely. He understands perception. He actively pushes back on the narrative, uses his platform. It's like this ongoing negotiation of his own legacy in real time.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
And this whole thing, it just highlights how facts, especially legal facts, get filtered. Interpreted differently through different community lenses. What's fact in court isn't always fact on the street.
And vice versa.
Exactly. It's not just about TI. It's about that fundamental tension when formal justice meets these deeply embedded cultural codes. Codes often born from necessity or deep distrust. It really makes you question how truth gets defined, doesn't it?
So where does that leave us? What's the takeaway here?
Well, the core conclusion, legally speaking, there's no official record, no evidence presented suggesting T.I. himself snitched or testified against anyone to get them locked up.
His plea deal followed the terms offered.
Yeah.
The bodyguard cooperated, yes, but that was the bodyguard's role after being caught.
Right. That's the legal reality based on the available information.
But the dissonance
Mm-hmm.
that comes from how those street codes interpret any perceived cooperation,
Mm-hmm.
even fulfilling plea deal terms, getting a lighter sentence, it can be read as signaling betrayal.
Mm-hmm. It challenges what loyalty means in that context.
Which leads to a bigger question, I think, for all of us listening. In this age of instant info, narratives flying everywhere, how do you reconcile documented facts with deeply held public opinions or cultural beliefs?
Yeah.
T.I. denies snitching. His career is proof of his resilience, maybe his influence. But does that equal redemption? Does it clear his name entirely?
Wow.
It really depends on who you ask, doesn't it? The court or the streets. It's a powerful reminder that reality isn't always just what's written down in official documents. Think about how different communities weigh those facts against their own codes, their own experiences, something to chew on.